Awesome. So we are going to talk about more enumerables today. So we want to get really good at enumerables because not only are they going to be important in Ruby, but any language you end up working in is going to use something like enumerables. They may call them something different, but it's pretty common across these higher order languages. So we are going to dig more into enumerables today. We're going to talk about understanding the code block return values and what the enumerable is actually looking for within that code block in order to do its function. And then we're going to explore some other enumerables today: max, max by, its opposite being like min or min by, and sort by, and we'll explore those. Okay, so let's start with a warm up. It's Monday morning. We need to get your brain thinking and get your brain doing some jumping jacks. So I just dropped your warm up in the back end channel. So let's take about 3 minutes and go ahead and start that. I'm asking you to write some code, so you may want to do it in a text editor, but you certainly don't have to. You can do it just in a notebook. All right, so let me know if you have questions, but go ahead, spend the next 3 minutes doing that. Okay, so let's come back together and talk about this a little bit. So I am going to do a little more of just calling on people today. It's something I do enjoy doing. So please know if I call on you, if you're not feeling like sharing, you can call a pass, okay? Or phone a friend if we don't know. But I think it'll be good to hear from other people today too. So Nick, if you are on, would you mind sharing with me what you did for the first, for number 1, so creating a new array with all the names upcased?
Okay, so I use the map enumerable.
Okay.
So I said and then I said office mates dot map do, and then I had a block variable that was office mate.
I'll just put mate for the sake of less typing.
All right, I like it.
Okay.
And then I just did office mates, or I guess mate dot upcase.
Okay, awesome. So a couple follow-up questions, Nick. Thank you for sharing. Why did you decide to use a map?
I started doing it with the each, and then I realized quickly like I'd have to set an empty array a variable as an empty array, so it just seemed faster to do map.
Okay, yeah, sure. So you did, like, thinking about it with each, you had like some kind of empty array, like you had to have an accumulator, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you had to shovel them all in here.
Mm-hmm.
Oh gosh, like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. And so that totally works. But map does that work for us, right? So map, the keyword with map is transform, right? So if we want to transform this array into something slightly different, map is a great tool to use this for. And the return value of map is the transformed array. So we can store that return value in this variable. Now, when we think about block return values, so this is our block, and thank you so much, Nick. I'm going to ask everyone to think about this. How does map know what to transform the array with? Like, how does it know how to transform each element? So think about that for a minute. Like, how would you explain that? So, Sage, if you're on, I'm just going off the participants list and whose cameras are on. So Sage, if you had to kind of talk about how does map know how to transform each element of the array, what would you say? I don't know, actually.
I guess my understanding is this is kind of a shortcut for what we're doing with each, but I'm not sure how to describe it.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. So let's go over to Robert B. Robert B, how does map know how to transform the element?
Because at least to my understanding is that with the map, it'll basically check all of them and give you a return. But the actual condition that it's looking for, or how you want to transform it, is whatever's in the block. So in this case, it'll be mate dot upcase.
Yeah, so map is looking in this block, and what it's actually looking for is the return value of this block to determine what it will replace each element with, right? So if we think about the return value right now of this block of mate.upcase, that's the string like Jim with all capital letters. So that's the return value of this expression. So that return value is what's going to get replaced in this first element. Okay, so thank you so much. And so what if I did this? Okay, what if I ran my map like this? So make a guess in your head, and we're going to take a look at what will happen when this runs. Okay, everyone have a guess in their head of what my big names array is going to look like? An array of all zeros. Is that what you thought? So I'm sorry, go into, how about, I'm looking at faces, Kevin. Why am I getting back an array of all zeros here?
Because it's the last line that was returned in the block.
Yeah, so just like a method, our block, the return value of the block is the last line of code evaluated. Okay, so even though this is happening, nothing's being done with that information. The 0 is the last line of code evaluated, so this is what we get. Perfect, thank you so much. So what if we flip-flop those?
And it would be mate upcase.
It would look normal like the first one?
Yeah.
Okay, everyone else decide whether you agree or disagree. Awesome, and it is just like it, right? Because again, just like you had mentioned, Kevin, the last line, that's the return value. So the last thing to run is what map transforms the value with. So it's all about the return value of this code block. Okay, any questions about that return value of the code block? Joshua?
So I learned recently that you're able to, within methods, return multiple objects. So I'm assuming that's the same for these enumerables.
A method only returns one thing.
So if you were to, for example, on a line after mate.upcase,
Yeah.
if you typed return 0, mate.upcase.
Oh, okay. Like this?
Yeah.
Okay, this looks like a rabbit hole we might not go down, but now I'm curious.
So then it should, I think it should be a nested array.
Why is it not hitting that? Why is it not hitting my binding.pry now? Probably because it's returning. Let's do this. Okay, I'm gonna say a couple things about that real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Oh gosh, I don't want to go down this, but I'm so curious right now. Okay,
yeah, we can parking lot this question. I was just
good idea. You know what? Can I create a parking lot here? And then I think what we're going to do for today is in the thread and the code help is that's where I'll kind of answer these parking lot questions. Return. I'm just going to write this. Oh wait, what did we say? Mate. Oh, maybe that's why. So generally speaking, methods only return one thing. This could be like in a code block. I'm guessing if you do the double argument that it would return both of those. I've never done that before because I don't agree with it because it can get data to become kind of mixed and dirty. Right? Because if we think about this idea of methods returning one thing, then we always know what those methods are going to return. When we start throwing multiple things into that method, then maybe that method should be broken up into a couple different methods, right? If we think about that single responsibility principle, like a method, if it's doing this and this and this, we should break that apart into multiple smaller methods so that each of our methods are doing one thing. Now, I know you're not talking about a method here, you were talking about this enumerable, but same thing here. If I suddenly have a nested array of multiple values, that can get start to get very dicey in terms of like keeping track of that data. Right? So we want to try to keep things, and this is why naming variable names very descriptive of their data that they're holding is important, because now you know this is holding all the office mates upcased. Maybe you do want the 0 for some reason, but then you would want to create like a different variable that's holding those zeros, right? And if you ever need to do something to bring these two arrays together, maybe that happens in a method called like, merge big names with zeros. So that a method is doing that, but we want to keep our data, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? We want to keep our data very like collected by what it represents. We don't want to mix all of our data together. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, awesome. Yes, there's a lot of things that you can do with Ruby to like create these really complicated, crazy arrays and hashes. But my question is, are you sure you want to do that sometimes, right? Maybe sometimes you have to, but other times I think it's best to keep your data separated, keep the integrity of the data pristine so that you can always go back to that data later and then do something with it in a method. Okay, cool. So we still went on a rabbit hole a little bit, but that's okay. I think that was good. All right. So let's talk about the next one, which was to find all the office mates with 4 or more letters in their name. Let's see, Eduardo, would you come off mute and share with us the solution that you did for finding all the office mates with 4 or more letters in their name?
Yes. You can make a variable like long names or something, or names greater than 4, and then set that equal to office mates dot find all do, and then we'll call it mate again. And in the block, I put name dot length greater than 4.
Okay.
And then end that.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, this is perfect. And so, Eduardo, why did you use the find all enumerable?
I wanted it to return all of the things that matched that condition of being greater than 4 in length.
Yeah, perfect. So everyone think to yourself right now, that's correct. Like find all is going to return all the elements that match the condition. So if someone asked you to explain how find all knows, and this is for everybody, explain how find all knows which elements to take into its new array, what would you tell them? You're all thinking about your answer. Curtis, are you raising your hand for a question, or you want to answer the question?
Both or either.
Okay, let's start with the answer to the question.
Okay, so if I were to describe like how the block affects this enumerable, I would say that for every mate, or basically for every time the condition in the block returns true, it adds that element to the like output.
Yes, perfect. So what find all is looking for is for the return value of this block to return true. We'll talk about that in a minute. So yeah, great job with that description. What was your question, Curtis?
My question is, like, I saw Meg do this the other day, but like when you use an enumerable as like an assignment value, is it more Ruby to just put like the block and the end like in line with the variable assignment, or is it more Ruby to like tab them in like that?
Yeah, I don't, I'm trying to see, this is what we see normally. So, because I get exactly what you're saying, like this kind of looks, then it's a little more like the eye can see this is the block, but I don't see it like that normally. Normally I just see it like this, where it's still, we're still just tabbed, like the end is lined up with the variable name, which actually these are not. And then the block is still just tabbed, or 2 spaces or 4 spaces, depending on how your text editor is set up. So this is typically how we'll see it.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, definitely. All right, so we said that find all is looking for its block to return true. What if we added, a 0? Let's do it here. What if we did this? Make a guess in your head what long names is going to be if I add that 0 into the block. Because actually, let me, one second, Jake. Find all, sorry, actually, Jake, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to answer the question.
Oh, okay. 1 second. So I'm just looking, I just pulled up the Ruby doc. So for find all, returns an array containing all elements for which the block returns a true value. Okay, we might want to use that information. So actually, I'm going to run this, and so everyone can test their assumption. So you made a guess on what long names will be right now. Okay, it's all the names from the original array. So Jake, why did that happen?
That I don't know. That was not my
Yeah.
guess. I thought I was going to return an empty array.
Ooh, fun. Okay, so let's explore this. So why do we think that this actually returned all of them? Jesse, go ahead.
I think that's because 0 does not evaluate to false or nil, and therefore mate evaluates to true for all elements.
Yes, that is accurate. So remember, when it says it's looking for a true value, it's not actually looking for the Boolean of true. It's looking for that truthy value, like we talked about Friday. So 0 represents a truthy value, right? Because it's not nil, it's not false. Those are the only two falsy values in Ruby. So since this block is evaluating to truthy, even if this is false, then the last line of code is the 0, which is truthy. So find all says, okay, truthy, 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 let's take everything. Okay. Garrett, go ahead. You have a question?
Yeah, so does that mean essentially like if you don't set up an expression in the block that is going to evaluate to true or false, then it's automatically going to default to like evaluating the truthiness of just whatever you have there. So like, for example, if I had put mate dot length equals 0 as opposed to just putting 0, I'm going to get a different result because when I just put 0, I get the original array because it's evaluating whether each element of the array evaluates to the true that 0 evaluates to. But if I do mate dot length equals 0, it's going to evaluate whether any of the elements in the array are equal to 0 itself. So I'm going to get an empty array in that case. So I guess there's a difference to me when I look at that between those two, like just putting 0 versus putting equals 0.
Sure. Well, when you put equals 0, you're doing a comparison, right? So it's either going to be true. This will result in either true or false because it's a comparison, right? The length would only ever be 0 if we have an empty string though. So, but this is just like when we have this comparison of mate.length greater than 4, right? This statement will return true, like an actual Boolean of true or false, which is what find all is using. Yep. So, but if we just put like a 0, or even if we put an empty string in here, right? An empty string will still evaluate to truthy, which means every element that runs through this will have its block evaluated to truthy, and we'll get back all the original elements in the array.
So anytime you don't set up a specific expression that will, like a specific expression like, mate.length greater than 4, it's going to default to evaluating to the truthiness of what you've said.
It's going to evaluate the last line of code. So even if you have this and then you have a 9, no matter if this turn evaluates to false, this gets ran after, and that evaluates, to truthy. So because the whole block itself evaluates to truthy, then find all will take the element. So order matters too, and because if we had it like this, now we'd be okay again.
No, I know. I think my question, I'm not articulating my question right, so maybe I'll just parking lot that and I can ask it later. Sorry for that.
No problem. So, but yeah, just thinking about like, what does my block ultimately evaluate to? That's how we know what find all, which element find all will take into its new array. Okay. Any other questions about how find all works or what we use to evaluate the truthiness of our elements? Okay, awesome. And note too, like because the find all is looking for a true or false value here for you, if you find yourself putting like an if statement inside, or something like return mate, something like that, if you find yourself putting an if statement inside of a find all, then you're not utilizing find all to its like full potential. right? It's there to, it's like has the if statement built in already for you, because find all is already saying to itself, if this evaluates to true or truthy, then take that element. Okay. Make sense? For now. All right. Let's jump into exploring min and max then. If there are other questions about like map or find all though, please go ahead and ask. All right, what I want you to do right now is take another 3 minutes or so and see if you can use each. Oops, I meant to put this in the notes so you could read it. That's okay. Take about 3 minutes to see if you can use the each enumerable to go through this nums array, and you can make your own nums array. It doesn't have to be this exact one, to find and return the largest number in the array. So either do that just in a text editor or in a journal. We're doing this. All right, do I have someone who would like to share their solution that they came up with to get the largest number out of this using .each? Connor, cool, go ahead.
Sure, so you have your array nums, and then below that I set max equals to 0. And then I did nums.each do block variable number. If number greater than max, max equals number, end.
Awesome.
And then print max.
Yes, of course. Cool. Oh yeah, let's run it. Do I have a pry? No. What is the max number? We expect 99, at least in mine. Awesome, it worked, great job. So go ahead and explain us through your logic of what you were doing here.
So you had to have something for each to put the number into, which is why I have the variable max. So for the block value in numbers each do, that's going to iterate through each number, and we're going to check and see if that number is greater than the current max.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's greater than the current max, then max equals that number. And as soon as it hits the largest number, it won't ever evaluate to true in there, and it won't assign max to any other value.
Yeah, exactly. Great. So we need to go through and iterate through each element and check each one to see if it's larger than whatever we have stored in our accumulator. And as you mentioned, if like once 99 gets into here, that we can see that that's the largest, but then every other element will cause this to be false, and max will remain at 99. So awesome, great job. Some hands did go up. Let's answer those questions and then we'll go on a quick palm. Will, go ahead.
Yeah, so I had a very similar method. But let's say the array in nums was so long we didn't know what numbers were in there. I was trying to figure out how to initialize max with some value that was a general. I couldn't initialize it with a string or with nil because that method wouldn't work. Is there a way to? So like, let's say they're alternatively negative numbers or something like that. 0 wouldn't work. Is there a way to initialize max with a sort of general integer value?
With this type of solution, I mean, what you could do is just like set this, well, you could set it to 0, and then whatever the first number is just set this equal to that first number. So I would do this like in a method maybe, but then you could set like max equal to number for the first one.
Okay,
and then
I was wondering if there was like, if I could do like integer.new and just have it be a general, like it knows it's gonna be an integer, it doesn't know which one yet. That didn't work.
Yeah, I think doing it as a 0 is fine for now, because even if we had like 1 million numbers in here, this would still work. You're right, the negative numbers could throw in a kink though, if like they were all negative and we started with a 0. So I think, again, that's just a contextual thing. I guess if you know you've got, maybe you can put some more conditions or logic in here to evaluate if you only have negative numbers, then you need to approach it slightly differently.
Thanks.
Sean, go ahead.
Yeah, this may be one for the parking lot, but I used a guard statement. Is there a rhyme or reason of when you should use those versus how the if statement's set up here?
So you did like max
equals num if the num is larger than max?
If number larger than max. I would say it's all about readability. So in my opinion, this guard clause is not really more readable than the if statement we had below. But I would be fine with this. It's really just about readability. And if this went any longer, if there was any more conditions, I would say just put it in an if statement. This is the piece of the guard clause that I'm not loving it being a guard clause. If it was just something like, you know, max, so like return, just like return max if this ended up to be true, I'm fine with that. To me though, this is not as readable as this. Maybe that one's a personal opinion though, for me. All right, cool. So let's take a quick palm. We'll take 5 minutes and then we'll look at a much easier way to do this and we'll do some breakout rooms. So I'm gonna just put it in here because I always forget the time I tell you all to come back. So we were talking about if we have an array of integers, we can use .each with an accumulator to keep track of which element is the largest. So Ruby gives us actually a really nice method though to accomplish this. And if we put a pry in here, can I see my nums array? I can. So nums dot max is our method for Ruby that will give us the thing. So that's pretty cool, right? So dot max is actually an enumerable, right? Why is this still considered an enumerable? Let's look at, how about Greg? Greg, do you have an idea on why dot max is still considered an enumerable?
Because it still has to read through the entire array.
Yes, exactly. Because remember the whole thing, what an enumerable is it iterates through a collection. And so this dot each here illustrates that even though we're just looking for one number, the max one, we still need to look at every element to determine whether that one is the largest or the smallest. So even though we're not passing dot max a block here, we can use it to pull out the largest number. And same with, we have the opposite of it as well. We have a dot min that will pull out the smallest one for us, okay? But that works great if we've just got an array of integers, right? But what if we had our, where am I typing right now? What if we had our office mates array, right? And what if we wanted to get the longest name? I can talk today. It's Monday, friends. I want to get the largest name. If I call officemates.max, will that work? Actually, make a guess in your head right now. If I call officemates.max, what am I going to get back? Ready? Toby. Well, that is not what I expected, but that's what we got back, right? So there's some other things we have to do. And specifically, we're going to explore max by as an enumerable, but you're going to explore that in your breakout rooms to kind of experiment with it and see how we would work to get the longest name. Okay, so I'm dropping right now in the Slack channel. You have some an array and some tasks to complete. And we're going to go into breakout rooms for about 10 minutes. So go ahead, pick someone to be a driver and share screen so that you can talk about it. I know everyone can do this on their own, like on your own text editor, and you can talk about it. But when you have a single piece of like code that you can all talk about and refer to, it makes discussion a lot easier. So I highly encourage you to have one person do a screen share, okay? And you'll accomplish those tasks together and explore those methods. Any questions about what you're doing? Oh, whoops, I asked and then I put you in the room. Sorry about that. I'll pop into every room. No questions? Everyone got that so easy? Okay, there we go. All right, George, we'll start with you. Let's go.
Yeah, we were doing the sort by, and actually Curtis had it on his screen, so now I'm not forgetting it, but it was like intriguing that like when we did the sort by for alphabetizing, it did not transform. Our code was office mates dot sort by do mate, and then we did upcase, so we did mate dot upcase, and then end, and then print office mates. And it was intriguing to me that using upcase, the return block value was then, we didn't use upcase, like it didn't transform like a map would. So it was taking the original array. So like, thank you for that thoughtful like explanation before, but that was just interesting. Like Angela is still lowercase and Michael is still lowercase. Oh, I'm sorry. That would have been crazy mates.
Either way, yes. Okay. Right? Because either way, yeah, this, and you said the key word there, which was transform, right? Sort by does not transform things for us in its return value. So if we look at like, let's pull this up. If we go to our sort by in our Ruby docs, maps result, where does it tell us our?
Yeah, it's real long.
Yeah, it is long, and it's actually, unfortunately, sometimes the Ruby docs are not as crystal clear as we would want them to be. And that's when that happens, I say just try it. Like go into a Pi session and try it, experiment, see what happens. So, sorry, and George, you are muted, just so you know, so you can unmute. But so sort by returns an array with this, with the elements evaluated by the condition or by whatever you put into this block, but it keeps the integrity of the data. So it does not transform it.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I mean, Curtis also had this really good insight about, Curtis, if you want to jump in, it was like the ASCII numbers, like that's what it's using. That's what he said was using it for sort by, which I also thought was really good insight. But yeah, that was just a interesting thing that I'm calling upcase, and it's not actually transforming upcase. It's just using that as the sorter by which, is that right? Okay.
Yeah, exactly, right? And crazy mates should actually be the same, right? And then our sorted mates comes back sorted, but all sort by does is take the element and put it in the order. It does not actually change the element in the final return value, but it uses that information, whatever you tell it to look at, in order to determine what order it should return all those elements in. So this was a great one, right? Because our sort by is looking at an alphabetical order, and you're right. And I heard Garrett talking about this too in his group. Each string value has an intrinsic value with the computer program that like translates to, you know, zeros and ones, right? And so that's how it's ultimately doing this comparison. And a capital M is not the same value as a lowercase m. And so if you just call dot sort on crazy mates, right, we get we don't get it organized as we want. So that's why it is important to make sure if you're doing string comparisons like this, that uppercase are being compared to uppercase or lowercase compared to lowercase. So that was great that you did that there. Awesome. Garrett, you have your hand up.
Yeah. So the thing that's kind of, I guess I'm still kind of curious about is I feel like when you do sort, it is comparing the ASCII value of the first character in each string. Why does it not compare the ASCII value of the totality of each string?
I do not know. I think that's just how sort.
That's the way it works.
Yes, exactly. So like generally speaking, I will only use like a dot max, a dot sort if I have like numerical values. If I need it to be, if I'm trying to compare strings in any way, shape, or form, I like to use sort by, max by, min by, so that I could be very explicit about what it is I'm looking for to determine how I want them ordered or maxed by or anything else. Yeah, it has some odd behavior that way. All right, what other questions did anyone, like even if your group came up with a solution to one of those, but you weren't sure why it was working the way it was? Okay, let's talk about number 6. I know not all groups got to number 6, but let's explore that one. So using the office mates, so this array, we want to use an enumerable to return true or false, depending on if every mate has a length of name greater than or equal to 3. Right, so I want my enumerable to look at these, and if every name is greater than or equal to 3, it will give me a true. If not, if Jim becomes Jim, then this would return false. Okay. So what do you think? Did any group come up with a solution that you'd like to share with us? Carson?
It took me a second to get the unmute button there.
You're like, where is it? Yes.
So we did length greater than or equal to 3. It's a long variable name.
It sure is.
Yes, it is. We could name it something else. Yeah.
I'll call it all over 3.
Smart. And we did office mates dot all question mark.
Okay.
Do mate and mate dot length greater than or equal to 3.
Awesome. So how is this dot all enumerable working?
It's looking at all the different values and seeing if the return value is true.
Yeah. So dot all works. Let's first make sure it looks good. What is this? All over 3 returns true. And that's what we expected. I also really liked another group was like, let's double test this and make sure that we don't have like a false positive. So let's make Jim with only 2. And now we would expect this method to return false, because how dot all is working is what it does is it looks at this condition for every element. And if every element evaluates to true, then dot all will return to true. But even if just one of them returns false or falsy, dot all will return false. Okay, so there's some cool enumerables like dot all, dot none, dot one, dot any that return this true false value. So let's check this out now. We want to verify that we didn't have a false positive. Okay, great. So we can get false. This can fail if if Jim only has 2 letters. Cool. Awesome. Any questions about that? Thank you, Carson. Okay. We're going to do some more breakout rooms because I think you working with the code is very valuable. So we'll probably spend the majority of the rest of the time working on this next collection of tasks. And I will pop through every room. I think I missed a couple rooms that time, so I apologize, but I'll get to every room to make sure that I answer any questions that you have. And then we'll come back together at the end to answer any final questions. So again, pick a different driver this time. If you're in, so you're gonna be in different groups, but if you were driving last time, you'll wanna make sure someone else is driving. All right. All right, your rooms are open. Oh, you pressed enter, Will, didn't you?
Yeah, sorry. I think I'm trying to type and kick everybody back here.
I know, it's the worst. Okay, all right, we're all back here. We always, man, these lessons go so fast, don't they? Goodness, when you're having fun, friends, right? Okay, what questions came up, or what was confusing, or what do you want to, what aha moments did you have that you want to share with the entire class? Because I heard some good aha moments. Joshua.
So I'm curious if someone would have a good solution for this. So for number 6, when you're sorting by the last letter, there's 2 names that have the end with M, so Pam and Jim. So if you are sorting by the last letter and they're equal to one another, what then could you do to, okay, it's like if they're equal, then sort by this additional parameter, if someone has a solution for that.
Anyone have any thoughts about that? Aiden? Maybe? Aiden, are you on mute?
Okay, there we go. So Jesse, do you want to explain this, or should I?
You can probably do it better.
Okay. So Jesse had the idea of reversing the name, so that when we sorted it, we would use not the last letter of the name, but the reverse name instead, because the Ruby has a string reverse method as well. And so it would sort by the last letter, and then by the second, and then by the third, and so on. So.
What is it? Could you walk me through that code really quick?
Yeah, we did. Oh gosh, I'm all everywhere. So we had office mates sort by, and then in the block variable we had mate, and then in the block we had mate.name.reverse.getDownCase is what it sorted by.
Nice.
Yeah, and then after that we had reverse because that's what you had to do. So.
Here.
If I. Yes.
Yep. What can we call this? Last letter sorted. Sure. Yeah, let's look at that real quick. I like that solution. Right, so
yeah, that was all Jesse.
Awesome. Because now we have A, right? And this is, now it's sorting by this and then by the A, and then the M, and then by the I. And it's doing that because it's looking at it in order, but because you reversed it, then you don't have to tell it anything else. So that's a cool solution. And then downcased it, of course, because if it gets to the last letter, you want it to all be the same. Yeah, and then I did ask for it reverse. So you can, remember, you can chain at the end of a do-end block, because Ruby chaining will wait for this entire block to be done, and then it'll work off of the return value. So the return value of this sort by is an array, and we can call that reverse on an array to reorder those elements. Oh goodness. So now our last letter sorted. Yep, Angela is last and Kevin is first. Cool. Awesome, great solution. Look at that, we're out of time. Curtis, go ahead though, and then we'll close out.
Just a clarification. So like sort by, if it has 2 things that have the same first letter, we'll move on to the next letter and sort those 2 things based on that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, like exactly. So if 2 of them are the same, it'll look at the next letter to determine which one goes next. Awesome. Cool. So I hope you had fun and learned some stuff today. Just recapping, when we look at our learning goals, really you want to be clear when you're using a current enumerable or looking at the docs to use a new enumerable. What is it looking for in the block? What is it looking for that return value of the block to be in order to run? How does that enumerable evaluate? Okay, and then we did learn the difference between max by, and then they're like min and min by, sort and sort by. So remember the smaller ones, min, max, sort, those are good to just tack on to the end of an array of integers or floats and not pass it a block. It can take a block, but it's a funky block and it takes some, unless you can explain it really well, it's not really useful to use. However, if you want to be very specific about what max by should look for or what sort by should look for, then you use the by counterpart. And so you can pass it a block and be very specific, like this code, about what you put inside of it and what it's looking for to either sort or pull the max thing by. Okay, awesome. All right, these always feel rushed at the end. So I'm gonna end this recording. And then we'll stay in this room. Let's take a 7-minute poem, and then we'll come right back and start on the